Hi everyone! Welcome back to the Stitches and Scribbles podcast. My name is Erin, and today I'm just going to be talking to you about my whips, the projects that I've finished, because I do have a finished project this week, and some kind of travel related stuff because I have a trip coming up. So before I dive into projects and everything, I do have a trip coming up that I'm starting to pack for and plan projects so that I have things to bring with me. So I wanted to make sure to show you that and kind of talk about what projects I like to bring while traveling and what projects I try to avoid bringing while traveling, because it'll kind of all tie in together because of the stuff I'm bringing. So to start off, I do have one finished object, and if you've been watching the last couple episodes of the podcast, you would have seen this already, but I made a shawl for a friend who is getting married, which is why it's a nice light ivory, but this is a Granny Meets Virus shawl, and I'll talk about the yarn real fast. Again, if you've been watching the podcast, you've heard all this information already. This is if you're new here or want to hear it again. I used the soft alpaca lace from Hobbii in color number 45. I originally purchased 4 skeins of this yarn. I probably used 2 2/3 or 2 3/4 skeins of this yarn, so you definitely only need 3 to make one the size that I did. It's not a huge shawl because this is a summer wedding. This is kind of just a in case the air conditioning is too much shawl. I'm also going to block it so it might stretch a little bit more. And it was made for somebody who is smaller than me. So on me, it's kind of in the small-ish shawl or shawlette category, although it does still work as a bandana style scarf on me. It's just not as huge as some of my other shawls that I have made for myself. But yeah, if you're planning on making this and want it to be of a similar size, then you probably only need 3 skeins of the alpaca lace. It's like almost 500 yards in a skein. It's 437 yards in a skein, so pretty decent yardage in there for what it is. But if you can tell from this yarn, I actually held 2 strands together. So the other thing I used was this silvery stuff from Hobbii. I'm going to look at my other color so I remember the name. This is the Go Handmade Glitter Deluxe. The one that I have over here is the pure gold color. This one was the silver. So I held the silver with the alpaca lace to give it a little bit of shine. But this project, again, if you've been watching the podcast, I've been working on this forever because the yarn is so fine and it's a big piece for a really fine weight yarn. So I think in total, I definitely at least put 20 hours into this, if not closer to 30. Definitely worth it for the friend that I'm making it for, but just be aware if you are planning on doing something similar. And in case I forgot to mention it, this is the Virus Meets Granny pattern. There's a lot of tutorials for it on YouTube. I watched a couple different ones to see how different people created it, but I really like using this pattern. I've used it a couple times before for shawls for myself and for others, but I highly recommend this design. I think it turned out very, very pretty, and but I'm also glad that it is done because the shower that I'm gifting this at is at the end of April, so it's kind of nice to have that part of the shower preparation done. If you haven't been watching previous podcast episodes, I've talked about this a couple times, but me and my mom are actually planning the shower, so we're doing all of the like little gifts and goodie bags and stuff like that as well. So definitely nice to have the main gift for the bride out of the way. But going kind of with that project, I was starting to kind of think about what projects I wanted to take for my upcoming trip and how to keep them organized the best way possible. So I have a couple of things kind of sitting out that I'll talk about. The first one is actually my travel project. So if and again, a lot of this is going to be repeated from previous podcasts, but I like to keep a traveling project going, something that is really easy to work on in the car. That's just kind of a good grab and go project. So the one that I'm currently working on is a stockinette stitch scarf that's just knit in the round on circular needles. And this was actually my birthday cast on scarf if you watched that video on my channel. So I have about half of my current skein left, plus another one that I haven't started yet. So I will definitely be taking this project with me because it'll be a good car project. But the event I'm going to is actually, we're driving so that my husband can run a marathon. So not only do I have the car trip, I have the part where I'm waiting while he's running to also sit and knit. So in addition to this project, I'm actually going to bring a backup project that's kind of similar, or will be kind of similar. I haven't started it yet. I do have another scarf like that in a project bag as a travel project, but it's one where I'm alternating between two yarns. And even though I do want to finish that scarf eventually, that's a good, like, going to someone's house to, like, watch the Super Bowl, or like a TV watching or a movie watching travel project, but I don't really want to be worrying about switching colors either in the car or while spectating at a marathon. So that one I think is actually going to stay here, but I do really like making those stockinette infinity scarves. I've now made a couple. So I'm going to be bringing this yarn with me as well so that I can start another one when I'm done with the first one. This is Lion Brand Mandala in the color Griffin. So it's got kind of a raspberry red, a like kind of rusty orangey brown, some grays, a light blue, a purple, and an indigo. So very unique color palette. But I thought this one would also be fun to knit into one of those infinity scarves because you can kind of see the colors transition as you're working. So that is that. But then there's a project I know I have to work on, and I know I'll have some downtime between events that we're going to, in addition to the fact that I wake up a lot earlier than my husband does. So usually when we go on trips, I bring a project to work on kind of in the mornings while he's still asleep or getting ready for the day. But that I can do one that's a little bit more intense, if that makes sense. So for the same shower where I made that ivory shawl, I'm also making a shawl for the mother of the bride that I haven't started yet. So it's going to be about the same thing. It's the soft alpaca lace again. This is color 21, so a deep navy. And I'll be using the gold Glitter Deluxe thread with it. Because I worked on the ivory shawl already, I know that yarn tangles really badly. So when I pack up for this trip, I'm actually going to be using this project bag that my travel project was in to keep that yarn and that project safe, so that it doesn't get too tangled up. I also really like this bag because I can fold the top down and it becomes kind of like a yarn bucket instead of a bag. So like that. This is one of the, I believe it's called a Ditty bag from Vera Bradley. I don't know if they still make these, but it's a bag designed so that you can put muddy or dirty shoes in here and protect it. I just dumped a ball of yarn out that I didn't know was in there. Anyway, it's meant to protect the rest of your clothes from dirty shoes. So the inside is like waterproof, water resistant. And I kind of like that for yarn as well because it means the yarn's not going to catch on anything on the inside. But also it'll kind of keep it safe a little bit from water or anything like that. So I'll be putting all of the alpaca yarn in that one. So yeah, I'm excited to have a lot of knitting and crochet time coming up. between being in the car it'll be about 12 hours total there and back, plus the like 3+ hours of watching the marathon, and all of those like morning time slots where I can work on the crochet shawl. Oh, also hook size for both crochet shawls. I used a 3.5mm hook for the ivory one. I'll use the same for the navy one. And then I think the only other thing I'm taking that is important to reference is I'm bringing a pair of little teeny scissors. I got this from my local yarn store, and I actually tuck a darning needle right into that same case just because it stays together really well. And I have a couple of stitch markers, progress keepers, just hooked to the scissors so that I have them ready to use on projects if I need to. I'll definitely be using one as a progress keeper on the navy shawl. That's, weirdly enough, kind of it. I talked about this in the last couple podcasts, but I've been very much just working on that ivory shawl for the last couple weeks, which is making it a little bit hard to like plan podcasts for you guys and continue to show you stuff when I'm both A, on a self-imposed yarn ban, I'm trying not to buy yarn, and B, working on a project, just a single project. I'm not working on a whole bunch of other things. But I'm kind of at a point now where I'm looking forward to things calming down a little bit. I think once this bridal shower is done and the school year kind of wraps up, I'll have a lot more time to do crafty stuff. I've also been kind of watching my little community here on YouTube grow, and we're almost at 2,000 subscribers. I think I'm at 1,910 last time I looked. And I'm also still creeping towards being a part of the, not Creator Fund. Creator Fund is TikTok. What's it called on YouTube? Being a YouTube partner. That's what it's called. Also, I'm sorry if you can hear my sink in the background. It's my dishwasher is going upstairs. But it's been kind of a weird journey to realize that like getting paid on YouTube is something that like very well could happen before the end of this year, just in how my hours have been climbing, and I've passed the subscriber requirement by a long shot now. You only need 1,000 subscribers. But it's been kind of surreal to think that I'm approaching my like 3-year anniversary on YouTube. I think I posted my first YouTube video in April of 2020. And if you haven't been around since the beginning of this channel, since I'm out of projects to show you, I'll kind of do a little recap of my YouTube journey so far. I started my YouTube channel in April of 2020. I was teaching full-time at that point. So March of 2020, everything shut down. We thought it was going to be, an extra 2 weeks of spring break. Because that was the original plan that my school had. But by April, we had really figured out, like, no, we're going to have to make some changes to get through not just this school year, but next school year. So in April, I kind of was at a point where I realized, like, oh, I'm going to be working from home for, like, a while. And in the early days of teaching online, we weren't using Zoom yet, or at least not in the way that we eventually did. I think at that point my school was, the expectation for the teachers was that we were posting assignments online and grading them, giving feedback, and returning them, and we had office hours on Zoom where kids could come if they wanted to ask questions or to talk or do whatever. But I had so few students show up to those office hours that I still did them. I was still online and still on Zoom during that time, but it was only for an hour a day, and posting the assignments didn't actually take that long, nor did grading, because unfortunately kids just weren't turning things in. And I don't blame them. It was a really stressful time to be a student at that point as well. But I had very little grading to do, and that meant I was left with a lot of extra time. And even though I didn't quite know it yet, I had definitely reached a point where I knew that teaching full-time was not going to be my permanent career anymore. I had had a very frustrating school year in the 2019 to 2020 school year, and I wasn't at the point where I was looking for other options yet. I think if that school year had continued as normal, I probably would have quit at the end of that school year just because of some other stuff that was going on. But shutdown kind of like hit pause on everything. And so I started my YouTube channel originally not showing my face. It was just kind of I didn't even think about getting monetized. It was definitely more of a just something to do and to, see if it went anywhere. And while I didn't really experience a ton of growth when I wasn't showing my face on YouTube, I did get in the habit of posting really consistently. I was posting once a week. I did a lot more tutorials and like yarn hauls and stuff like that. And I just found myself enjoying it more and more, but I kept my face off of YouTube just in case it were to cause any problems at work. I never even addressed it with my leadership team at that school. I don't even know if I told them that I was on YouTube. I think I just kind of like left that out of any conversations. They definitely knew when I left that my goal was to start an online business, and part of that would be social media based. But after the 2020-2021 school year, I did quit my full-time teaching job, and that was when I started showing my face on YouTube and doing more sit-down talking videos like this. So I guess it's been almost 2 years now since you have seen me on YouTube. Before that, it was just my hands showing you how to do crochet and knit stuff. But yeah, it's kind of wild now that I have over 200 videos up on this channel, and I get comments from people fairly regularly. I'm just really excited for what this channel is going to look like moving forward and getting more opportunities and stuff like that. But it is kind of a really busy time of year for me right now. So I know I've had a couple of like really short podcasts or kind of last minute videos, and I really made it a priority this year to try to minimize the number of videos I was creating that would take more than a day to film, if that makes sense. So even though I love doing like big tutorials for you, that's a lot of planning, that's a lot of designing, and it involves making a fairly large finished piece. So I think focusing more on smaller things and kind of vlog style videos has really helped with that process to kind of bring it down a little bit to where it's more manageable. And it's allowed me to focus on a multitude of things as I do this. Yeah, I talk about subbing all the time on this channel. After I quit my full-time teaching job, I did end up subbing at my local parish school that we go to church there on Sundays, so we had a connection there already, but I met some really nice parents at an event who informed me that they needed more subs at school, so I jumped in, and I love that I have a more positive teaching community now. Not to say that talking about quitting teaching is challenging, and I've seen a lot of other people run into this problem because you never want to blame it on anybody in particular. Like, obviously we know now there's a problem with education as a whole, but from my last school, I loved my students. I loved the subject I got to teach. I was just very frustrated with not having enough resources and not feeling supported by staff members that were supposed to be there to support teachers. And that created a really frustrating environment where I was designing my own curriculum, but it's not like I was getting compensated for that. And that took a lot of extra time when they should have just purchased a curriculum that worked for our school to begin with. And that was not a choice that was made. And it was frustrating to be dealing with the same issues on a daily basis and seeing them not resolved on a daily basis, but also that frequently it was turned into something that was the teacher's fault, not the system's fault. So that was a very long explanation of talking about teaching. And I know I've talked about why I left teaching on different podcasts before. Actually, I think the first one where I show my face on YouTube is the one where I talked about it the most. But it's getting to this point in my YouTube journey has kind of just reminded me of why I started this channel and what was going on in my head and kind of all this other stuff. So there we go. That's your ramble session for the week. Wanted to talk about travel stuff and packing, but we ended up here somehow, just because it didn't take as long as I intended to talk about all the travel stuff. So I think we're just going to cap it there for this week. I'm probably going to pre-film next week's podcast if I can, just because with travel and what my schedule looks like next week, I think filming at the beginning of next week is going to be a challenge. So because of that, you'll probably see my knitting library on the next podcast, because that was my plan for the next time I needed a quick podcast topic. And what are you getting this week? Oh, this week I have a One Day Makes coming out for you on Friday, where I made a project that I saw going viral on TikTok. So you can look forward to that quick, easy project. And I'll talk more about the pattern and everything once we get there. But that's going to be it for this podcast. Thank you so much for watching and listening to me ramble about stuff that was not knit and crochet related specifically. If you want to follow me on other social media, that information will be in the description box below. And thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everybody.